Hello and welcome to Movies, Films, and Flicks. I am Mark Hoffmeyer, and joining me, Megan Hoffmeyer.
Sarah Newark, DJ Valentine, Billy Business, and Brendan Peters. This is Andy Boetes. This is Nathan Leahy. David Cross. It's Jake Lewitt. Norbert Morvan. It's Lisa Leahy. Joey Lewandowski. John Levingood. Professor Mike Dillon. Nick Riak. Niall Moore. Adam Youngblood Hutt. Eric Hoffmeyer. It's Johnny Nunn.
Hello and welcome to Movies, Films, and Flicks. I am Mark Hoffmeyer, and joining me is a man who just fixed his BLT drive. It's Professor Mike Dillon.
What's up? Hackers.
I have to ask you a question. So when I watched this movie, probably in 96, I didn't have an internet. I didn't have the internet. I didn't have internet till 01, dial up, all that kind of stuff. So I knew nothing about computers. I think my first time I got on a computer was at my step half aunt's house, Terry, and I had to print out some Sarah Michelle Gellar pictures from Buffy that I could put on my wall. That's what the internet was to me when I was young. But you know, you
how long did that take?
I mean,
for the image to download
way too long.
Yeah.
It was crazy. So you're in Japan, presumably during the release of this. What did the technology feel like to you? Because you know, I just knew nothing about the internet, and so you know, I knew on the net you could order pizza. I knew you could hack. Like hacking movies were so big in 95, which is Virtuosity and the net and all these different films. But you know, were you guys a little bit more advanced technology wise? Like, I mean, I guess you didn't know because you didn't really grow up, you know, in America like I did in the country of Florida, like in the Florida country. But like, did this feel fresh to you, or were you like, man, this is already outdated tech?
No, I think where we felt more advanced had to do with more consumer electronics. So we were way ahead on cell phones than I think I remember my American counterparts being. And also like video game consoles, like PlayStation and things like that were just superior to anything. And Nintendo, those consoles they were superior to anything coming out of the States throughout the 90s until maybe Microsoft put out the Xbox, and that became a major competitive force. But in terms of internet, you know, we had the dial-up. One of my earliest memories of thinking like, wow, the internet is a fountain of information was, do you remember the song Informer by Snow?
Yeah, Snow.
Right?
Yeah. I had that cassette, Lady in Red and all that. Yeah.
Lady in Red, yeah. So that's a pretty solid album, but Informer was the big hit. And of course it's done in this sort of reggaeton scatting. And at the time it was a little bit difficult to decipher what the lyrics were, even though it was on the radio all the time. And my earliest memory of the internet is somebody printing out the lyrics. They found it on a website somewhere and printed it out to show that it was in fact English.
Oh.
That it is decipherable, because there was some, I guess, debate going on. Now, hearing it now, it's easy to decipher. But at the time, maybe being however old I was, I remember that being like, no, it's not. It's like Jamaican. It's some kind of other language. It's pidgin. It's like, no, it's actually English. Here's the proof. Thinking like, wow, the internet knows so much.
So it solved the snow debate. I love that.
That's my earliest memory. That probably like 94 or so, maybe even before that. But yeah, I don't quite remember when, you know, I started associating the internet with images and being able to download stuff. And then eventually, I think around 99 is when I definitely started using the internet more to look up movie trailers. I think like the Matrix trailer, Phantom Menace, of course, that year, I think maybe coincidentally that was around the time that some new type of broadband or some kind of faster connection became more commonplace, and we were able to actually download a trailer within seconds instead of 30 minutes of, you know, of this this gray bar moving slowly to be able to watch the whole thing. So yeah, no, long answer to your question. I think no, I don't feel my relationship with the internet was accelerated or enhanced in any way by being in Japan.
Got it.
In other areas for sure, but not my ability to connect.
And listen, I know that it's a completely different country, nowhere near each other, but I lived in South Korea in 08, and I was on a subway in Seoul, and someone was streaming TV from their phone with crystal clear visuals. And I was like, what kind of wizardry is this? Like, when you talk about phones in Japan, I don't know, like I remember just looking at that thing, and we didn't have any of that in the States at the time, but I just remember being like, holy crap, they're watching TV under the ground, like in a train, streaming fast.
2008 or so, around that time, give or take, maybe a few years in either direction. That's when Korea got really, really wired up.
Okay.
South Korea around that time, I don't know if this statistic is still true, but it was considered the most wired country in the world in terms of just sheer number of internet connections, number of internet cafes, number of households that had high-speed internet. And so, yeah, South Korea really zoomed past. China in some places has this as well because once they started modernizing after sort of they opened up to the world economy, even though they're still run by a communist party, there's a lot of swaths of land that had people in them who didn't even have phone lines,
Hmm.
right? And so say, okay, well, we could modernize by installing landlines, but then we're just going to replace all that with cell phones anyway. So they just kind of skipped a major step and just moved right to digital and moved right to cellular instead of that crucial step that most of us had for decades, which is to have landlines and hard lines. And so as a result, there is a region of mainland Asia, I think, that has like really strong sort of online infrastructure, including
Got
South
it.
Korea.
It's because of that connectivity that I went back and got my master's in media and communication studies because I saw some things just happen overnight because of the internet out there that really got me interested in how communication is, you know, moved across the internet. And so I like it's kind of fun. Like the tech out there was so far advanced, but I saw the way it could rally people that actually got me back into school because I was like, I got to learn more about this and get educated on it. So I guess I have that to thank for my master's degree, seeing all that. So that was fun. But yeah, it's not hackers, but I just had to ask you that question because when I was watching it, I just wanted to know. But this movie rules, Professor Mike Dillon. I watched it again.
Yeah. This movie rules.
It does. And it I think I was reading about the hacker. I was reading the interviews from hackers about this film. They're like, it works because they weren't trying to even get it right. There's certain things that are right, but they weren't trying to like narrow it down because they're like staring into the abyss and they're floating around things. And I think because of that, there's a certain timeless charm to it that works because they weren't trying to. I think they weren't like they're in spinning phone booths being spun around while they're hacking
Right.
things with VR glasses and stuff. So I think
So
they,
you mean this like Johnny Mnemonic does the same thing, which is imagining cyberspace as this like sort of a physical set of dimensions with measurable shapes that can be
yes,
navigated, right?
yeah,
Yeah, that is such an amusing and dare I say kind of charming look at what Hollywood used to think computers were capable of.
yeah,
Right? And I think that's you're still in that moment in which the internet's around from the late 80s as a technology, but it really becomes kind of what we think of as the internet in the mid 90s. And so these are like the net is another one, Johnny Mnemonic is another one that just kind of are grappling with what that looks and feels like in a way that consumers can understand. It's like we all know what the internet is, but what is the internet? Like what is it that you can tell them kind of putting their creative juices to effect here and to varying success, I think.
okay. I put together a list of reasons why I think this movie has had a lasting impact because we've talked about Johnny Mnemonic, and it's a cult classic, but it's not. It doesn't have the fan base of hackers. We talked about sudden death, no, rapid fire, hard target. They're all kind of cult classics, but I think hackers has really transcended that. Like this is a true cult classic where
Mm-hmm.
you handed the VHS tape around, you love these characters, and I was going to come up with five, but I kept stretching it. But I want to give you like 6, 7 reasons why I think this movie is still a cult classic. You ready for it?
Okay. Yeah, and I have my own kind of
Oh,
opinion about this as well. So go ahead.
okay. One, Freak, Renoli Santiago, who was in
Mm-hmm.
Dangerous Minds that year. The
Mm-hmm.
authenticity that comes from Santiago is unrivaled. I mean, just I think Santiago adds so much to this cast with just bombast and likability and like authenticity that like I'm freaking. So, but I think you found like the casting in this movie. I guess I could have just said casting, but I really like that character of Freak. I think Freak is just I don't know, it just works so well in the
He
film.
is yeah, he's great. He's in Con Air, right? He's
Yeah,
Sally
Con
Candy
Air.
in
Yeah,
Con Air. But unfortunately
disappears.
he's a he yeah, he's a freak, right? A freaker as in PH
Yeah,
freak, which
PH.
he hacks through the phone lines, and that's the one type of hacking that just like is completely obsolete. And so
What?
if I were to show this to a young generation of people or students or something, I would have to explain. It's like, oh, so listen, there used to be these things called pay phones. So that's unfortunate. That's the one character who would be removed or written out for any kind of contemporary update of this movie. But he's great. He's got one of the best lines, which is the I left it in that place where that one time where I saw that thing or whatever it is, and he's talking to Kate on the
Yeah,
phone.
yeah. I love it. And they know. It's I just think the authenticity. Like I think what makes cult classics are when the actors are you just feel the authenticity. It's like really good casting. The performances are alive. The next reason though, the
Yeah.
plague, Eugene.
Hmm.
Like I love that no one call like a lot of people don't even call him the plague. They're like, hey, this he's like, no, it's the plague. Like they
Well,
keep calling
Yeah,
him
Penn Jillette calls him, oh, okay, Mr. the Plague.
and everyone knows. I bet he's been saying this for years to people. Like, no, don't call me my name. I am the plague. And his like scene where he's skateboarding
Hmm.
and just he's on the limo skateboarding and he's just this former hacker who got a really good job and now is like skimming money from a company and he's just I don't know the way that Eugene I like Eugene and I like the way that Fisher Stevens plays him as well. It's just such an absurd character, but he works. He really works.
He works great. I mean, he's just the right amount of like greasy evil, but also still kind of nerdy at the same time. Like I believe him when he's playing the VR game and he's just like getting far too into it.
Yeah.
I like that he's got this sort of kind of slicked back long hair, but they don't hide his bald spot.
Oh, it's
Yeah,
perfect.
I do think Lorraine Bracco's pretty weak in this movie. And
Oh yeah,
so
yeah.
they don't quite have any chemistry that I think. Now, that's not primary to the story's focus. So I don't think it's that much of a demerit. But at the same time, I wish there had been maybe more banter that I could enjoy between Fisher Stevens and Lorraine Bracco, because those are two really rich, kind of meaty character performances that could have had more, I think. But
Flu shot. What's this?
yeah, somebody talk to me.
Oh man. But he really and then okay. Next, the wardrobe from Roger Burton. So I was reading about Roger Burton. He was David Bowie's stylist in the 80s. Like this guy is a maniac. And I think the costumes in this movie are
Hmm.
I mean, like they're surfing the web, so that's why Jolie has like is wearing some like kind of what not neoprene. She's wearing like some surf gear, that like wetsuit type material during parts of it. Like you see Jonny Lee Miller, he's just constantly decked out in the reds. Like every character, I mean, Matthew Lillard is put in some really strange outfits, but he actually absolutely rocks. But the costume design is like really unique and futuristic. I don't think it's really all that dated because it still looks kind of cool. But yeah, I think Roger Burton's costume design, like with Iain Softley, it there's always something interesting wardrobe wise to look at in this movie, which I love.
100% with you. Um, Although I think it leads to my one major criticism
Uh-oh.
of the film with regard to its cyberpunk aesthetic. So you're right that what I liked about the costume is not just that it's kind of quasi-futuristic, but it's also kind of androgynous.
Yeah.
Because there's nothing that Acid Burn is wearing that Crash couldn't wear either, right? I mean, there's some stuff that Angelina Jolie's wearing that's a little bit sort of feminine, but style wise, there's nothing really going on so for instance, this takes place in the 90s, right? And 90s is all about grunge and flannel and whatnot. And
Yeah.
that's like what we see this characters, these teenagers wearing in this movie is not what people were wearing in the 90s, right? So the movie takes place in this sort of fantasy space, which is like, it's meant to resemble real life. There's really nothing too futuristic about the world of hackers. Maybe with the exception of that video arcade, which has like the central game that's kind of enormous. But otherwise, all of the tech is rooted in things that did exist in the 90s, even if the movie's being fanciful with how these things are used. So it's also kind of in this future punk space in which people are not following trends and have a sort of freedom to tailor their own outfits. Because if you look around, like in the high school scenes, around the classrooms, none of the other students are dressed like this.
Yeah.
They're
Yeah.
just like normal teenagers, right? So it I think what the costume design is doing is that it does the work of visually distinguishing the hackers from the sort of mainstream kids. The Jesse Bradford character, Joey, is not dressed that distinctly at all because he
Yeah.
isn't there yet. He's not elite
Yeah.
yet, right? He's just a kid. So here's my criticism, right? As a genre, cyberpunk is really about like hacking the culture and dissolving or rewriting existing boundaries. Now, those boundaries are primarily between human and machines, but all kinds of human boundaries, like ideas of nations and things like that, and taking those boundaries and rendering them superficial. or obsolete. And that includes traditional gender boundaries. This is something the Matrix really understands.
Oh,
Um,
yeah, yeah.
right? Like all of these boundaries that have kept us from truly kind of coming together as one are all kind of obsolete in the age of information and in the age of hackers who, by their nature, kind of destroy these boundaries and rewrite the code to their own ends, right? And that's mainly reflected, I think, in the androgyny of the costumes, which is why it's really disappointing to me that he insists that she wear a dress at the end of the movie as part of their bet, right? Because it ends on a note of like reintroducing and reasserting sort of traditional gender norms that I think doesn't feel very punk to me.
It would have been funnier if he just everyone knew she would hate it, and that's why he's making her wear the dress. But it seems like he legit just wants her to wear a dress because
And he
she would look
and he
pretty in a
compliments
dress.
her. He
Yeah,
compliments her at
and
the
she
end,
says she
right? Yeah.
likes it, and she doesn't even seem comfortable in it. In those scenes, Jolie does not seem comfortable. Like she and Jonny Lee Miller ended up marrying, so they have really good
Yes, they
chemistry,
did. Yeah.
and they're just like beating up on each other, which is kind of funny. But yeah, she does not seem comfortable with that. So I think if you just played it a little differently, the dress works. But since he's like, you look really pretty. And I'm like, wait, I think she looks better in the surf stuff earlier. Like she looks cooler.
I agree.
And
I mean, to be
so,
fair, she looks uncomfortable. To be fair, the dress itself does look uncomfortable.
yeah, that's true.
Like
Maybe
this
it's because of
really
that.
kind of over designed thing. But this idea of, no, I want you to wear a dress, which is to say you're a girl dressed like one, feels a little off center to me.
Yeah.
Because all through the rest, like they have outfits that are like cool and chic and futuristic and functional, and also not explicitly coded, sort of like this is a what a guy would dress in the future, and this is what a girl would dress in the future. I think there's something a little bit more neutral about it in ways that are, I mean, her outfits are there to accentuate her body, and Angelina Jolie's sexy, all the rest of it. But there's nothing sort of in the style that is coded feminine.
No, you're
She's not
correct.
wearing skirts and things like that. So until the very end, when they have her wear a dress, and I thought, no, well, I don't love that.
I wish she just would have been uncomfortable. And he's like, yeah, that's why I did it. Like, does that make sense? Like, he did
Yeah,
it to be a
totally.
brat, but he does it, but he does it. Yeah, that's that. Watching that again, like, I don't think I thought about that in 96, but watching that again now, it's kind of like, wait, like, she's pretty cool. Like, I thought the dress was like a joke. Like, you don't wear dresses, so you got to wear a dress. But yeah,
I think I might have thought that, oh, right, I lost the bet. I will wear a dress, but I'm going to wear is such a departure from a traditional girl next door sundress. It's like
yeah.
almost this kind of gray, spiky samurai dress. And so it's like I'm going to wear a dress, but I'm still going to wear it my way.
Yeah.
So she doesn't completely depart from her style. She doesn't become like this sort of cute little girl next door. She's still I got to be me, which is great. But yeah,
She's not like Ty from Clueless, who gets a remake, redressing from Cher.
right.
Imagine Cher and Acid Burn together. That would be an interesting. Would they get along?
They wouldn't get along.
You got me wanting to watch Bethany Murphy movie. Listen to
Well,
our
well,
drive episode.
I can see, because Clueless opens with Cher on her little computer, like sort of trying
Oh
out different
yeah.
match outfits. I can see Kate hacking that computer and coming up with just absurd outfits for Cher to wear. And Cher arrives in school and everyone starts laughing at her. And she's like, "What? I thought this matched. My
Or
computer
everyone
told
would
me so."
love it, and she would start a new trend, and Acid Burn would just be pissed.
God damn it.
And all of a sudden, Cher becomes like it becomes the rage, and it's because of Acid Burn. Oh,
Uh, with
but
regard to the cast, though, I do think it's a shame that the weakest performance of the bunch is from Jonny Lee
yes,
Miller.
yes.
Yeah, I mean his American accent is pretty spotty.
What's I didn't get this. I didn't come up with this on my own, but I was listening to a Red Letter Media conversation about this movie, and Macaulay Culkin and the guy, because he was a guest, they were talking about how he sounds like he's like a 1920s businessman in this movie. But there's also like the Love Shack. Who sings the Love Shack? That song, the Love Shack. Oh, the B-52s. That guy from the B-52s. Like,
Mhm.
hey, like Johnny Lee Miller definitely has that, I don't know, kind of B-52 vibe, or like 1920s businessman that's very boisterous accent. And once you hear that, you can't really unhear it. But isn't that the point of this lead though? Don't Isn't he this straight guy put into this world? Because like, and then he's surrounded with characters to make them pop. Like, you probably couldn't make the. I mean, watching a movie about serial killer bouncing around from home to home, because he might be homeless and just eating where he can. Could be interesting, but it's a different movie. So is the point to put this kind of person front and center, or does that make sense?
Yeah, I think you can gain a lot of mileage by having really sort of fun, colorful characters. Like the ensemble, they're all kind of goofy in their own way. And so Dade, is that his name? Well, he's the main crash override. What's
Oh
his
yeah, yeah.
real name? Yeah.
Fade.
Well, so I mean, yeah, it's fine that he's the straight guy, but at the same time, it's just my issue is more just I never believe. First of all, you're conservatively like 28 years old and you're
Yes,
playing
he
a
is.
teenager. That's one thing. That's distraction. But also, just his accent doesn't work, right? He's an American. He's a New Yorker. He just doesn't sound natural to me. And everybody else is really just kind of comfortable in their own goofiness. Like Matthew Lillard is just very comfortable doing Matthew Lillard stuff. Santiago's great, you know. They're just free to be oddball characters. Like Razor and Blade are great. Fisher Stevens is
Yeah.
great. Everyone is just kind of comfortable doing what they're doing, and he's the only one who just feels miscast, I think, is the rub.
You know what's interesting though? When he showed up, I listened to a Renoli Santiago interview, and he said that Miller showed up every day prepared and ready, and was just a rock on set and taught everyone about like professionalism, because I guess he just came from the English scene, plays, everything like that. So even though I think his performance is not the best, I think he was a good leader, which allowed everyone else to be themselves on set. So I guess that I'll give him credit for that, if that makes sense. I guess he
Yeah,
took
it's
it.
not it's yeah, it's not a knock on his character,
Yeah,
his
yeah,
personal character, or his professionalism, but just yeah, his
yeah.
accent's just not quite there. Guess the pool on the roof sprung a leak. It's like, ah,
Hey, like once you hear that though, it's really hard to unhear. And I have a quick question for you. You you're a hacker, you're part of this group. What's your wardrobe? Like, what are you wearing if you're part of this crew?
oh my God, I don't think I have anything in my wardrobe that would
Like,
that would be worthy.
who do you see? Like what's the ideal version of yourself? Like what do you become a super hacker? Like how do you think you would dress with these guys? Like let's say you're 3 years deep in with them.
Okay, so I think you have to think about sort of what sector of society from which you're hacking. So these are like we're high school kids, we're on the streets, we're gonna do our hacking from dive bars, and we're gonna improvise connections and go in through the back door so that polite society doesn't even know we were there. And then there's the Johnny Mnemonic, who he works with like the upper level clientele, smuggling data for corporations and whistleblowers and things like that. So he needs to be able to get in and out of fancy hotels and his stomping grounds are Wall Street, even though he's subverting it from the inside, right? So that's why he needs to wear a suit and look the part. And I think that's just as valid a kind of category of hacking. And so I would probably hew more toward something that involves me dressing like a professional, just because I don't think I could pull it off if I was doing the sort of skateboard hacker look. They would spot me as a narc like
Yeah,
immediately.
yeah.
Yeah.
So what do you I think I know what I would dress like. I would look like Jason Segel from SLC Punk, another Matthew Lillard movie, where
Okay.
everyone's dressed extreme, but I'm just wearing polo. But I'm the one like destroying cop cars and getting into fights at I'm like the most normal looking of the guys, but I'm also the bouncer of the group, if that makes sense. But I also hack because I don't really care if people talk about my fashion. Does that make sense? I would always have a polo.
It does make sense. You know what? I don't think you could spot me as a hacker from my wardrobe. I think I would wear kind of sort of a dark overcoat. I'd look very Rick Deckard, but you can clearly see the implants in my eyeballs, or the kind of cybernetic enhancements that I have on one wrist or on the side of my face or something like that. And that's how you know I'm a hacker. It's not from my wardrobe, it's from my implants.
So you'd be Deckard. Oh, I love that. So no one, I would love it if just no one thought I could hack, but I'm actually really good at it. Like that's what I
Mm.
want. I think that would work. Like
They
I just have my
underestimate you.
polo on. I'm like a bouncer. I don't really act punk. I don't have a mohawk or anything like that, but put me on a computer and I'll probably go further than everyone else and get in trouble. So that's how I vision. What would be your nickname? I was thinking you can't be the professor because that could link back to you. Like
Hmm.
that, you like if the professor who's the professor? Well, we'd have someone's been hacking on a college campus and they're calling themselves the professor. It's like, well, Professor Mike Dillon. Would you be like the adjunct? Would you be
The
instructor?
adjunct.
Would you be like what would you
It's like, yeah, Mike, we got a problem. I told you, call me the adjunct.
is there like I guess you can't give yourself your own nickname. Like I think the plague gave himself a nickname, like a
Yes.
handle. Like I truly believe that you can't, like, there's that scene where Joey comes up and asks for a name. You can't give yourself a name. So I guess if I had to make, yeah, you'd be the adjunct.
Yeah. I was asked once what my rap name would be if I became a hip hop star, and my immediate answer was DJ Mic Drop,
Oh,
which I think is not bad, right? Cyberpunk name, I'm not sure what I would do if I was a keyboard surfer, as Bill Gibson would call it.
Mikey
But
Mnemonic.
Mikey Mnemonic.
Is
Yeah, okay.
that a good one?
I'll take it. I'll take it. Why not?
Mikey Mnemonic. But I just want to be called like Scud or something like that. Just a
It,
real inelegant name.
I was just thinking when you point out that, yeah, he clearly, the plague is a name he gave himself. It's just, you can kind of suss out his backstory. And maybe this is kind of informed by decades since of kind of understanding male toxicity and having a lot of cultural conversations about the quote unquote epidemic of loneliness among young men and incel culture and things like that. But you can kind of see that Fisher Stevens is an obviously really talented hacker who no one took seriously because he was awkward or because he was just kind of narcissistic and arrogant, who then went on to become a big corporate hacker and just wants to get revenge on everybody, right? It's like they didn't take me seriously. Who's laughing now? Yeah, if he because I think what makes him a villain is not his corporate scheming or anything like that, or even the fact that he works for the man, so to speak. It's that he doesn't have a community.
Yeah, because no one wants to even
Right.
call him the plague where he works. No one really understands him. And he's just
No,
with suits all day.
he's someone who abandoned his roots, abandoned his tribe in
Whoa.
order to go work for the benefit of corporate profit, and that's a big no-no in this ethos, you know. And that's his self-exile from the community of hackers while still pretending to be part of it by being into games and like, no, I travel by skateboard and I go by my hacker name, which is my real name, not my slave name, which is Eugene. It's like, yeah, you know what? You represent power now. You can't take that position and try to be cool and the Ben Mendelsohn character has the same problem in Ready Player One, right? Which is yeah, I'm just like one of you. I'm down with the guys. I love video games, just like you. And it's like, no, man, you're a CEO. You can't code switch like that anymore, right? It betrays your privilege.
Whoa. That's probably one of the deepest takes. He's just a hacker without a crew. And he's in the corporate world still trying to cling to stuff. But I think the way Fisher Stevens plays him, though, like you said, with the bald spot, getting way too into the VR gaming and the skateboarding, he's still clinging desperately to that. But because of that, no one takes him seriously in his corporate job. So he's kind of alienating himself, which when people do alienate themselves, they do kind of resort with more sarcasm and control and kind of screw the man, look out for yourself. So this is actually a pretty good character.
Yeah, I think there's a lot to him.
Whoa.
That maybe gets a little subsumed because his character is more, I think maybe a shade too comedic at times.
Yeah. Like no one fear. I is here.
Yeah, he's a little too heavy on the wisecracks. Nothing against Fisher Stevens, but he's also, as a smaller guy, he's not physically imposing, and so he has to be imposing with his intellect and sheer skill as a villain hacker, which he demonstrates time and again, but he also just accompanies it with like a lot of quips, and it just seems like a big kid lashing out. Now, I think that's exactly what he is, which is what I think makes him interesting, but it makes him more whiny and immature than as like a truly menacing
Yeah.
force to be reckoned with, right? Especially when you give yourself the name like I'm the plague. It's like, yeah, all right, dude. You're like, what are you, 5'6"? So
Oh, and he loved Fisher Stevens loved this. He showed up for the 20th anniversary, the 25th anniversary. He said he loved the costumes that he got put into, just the giant fur coats and like you could tell I always love when actors love one of their roles. And you could tell that no matter how much success he got, he won an Oscar. I think he's still real. I think he would show up to any convention to talk about the plague because he loves the character so much.
yeah,
And that's what I love that though. I love
I wonder how
sometimes
much love he gets for playing an Indian man in the
oh
short
gosh.
circuit movies.
What's crazy? I didn't realize that until someone told me. Because I watched those movies in the 80s And I just remember like the Los Locos kick your butt, Los Locos kick your
Yeah.
face, Los Locos kick your balls
Get
in
your
outer
balls into
space.
outer space.
I don't think as a child I ever put two and two together about the brown face, but it's definitely haunted him. I think every interview he does now, they bring it up. So it's definitely, yeah, it's caught up to him for sure. But I definitely, when I watched Hackers in '96, I did not know that this was the short circuit guy who did it. He did it in two movies.
Yeah. Oh,
It,
he's the main in the second one
it's one thing
because Gutenberg wouldn't come back.
you do it in one movie, right? And you're like, that was a terrible idea. But then you come back for another round of it. So 80s. It's not good, but yeah, I think the fact that he went back again makes it all the worse. More work, worse than it's still bad. I'm not saying it's good, but I think the fact that you did it twice should haunt you. But yeah,
Well, it's it's a we've talked about these kind of things before. I'm typically less inclined to put the blame on the actor. Like there is, they're not without responsibility to turn down things that are clearly problematic. But at the same time, it's like if you ask an actor 99% of the time, why did you do that movie or why did you do that? Especially if it's earlier in their career,
money.
their answer is going to be because I needed the work, right?
Yeah,
Like what kind of position would I be in to turn it down? Given how competitive this market is, and also the fact that the studio greenlit a sequel but didn't think to address the brown face is indicative of the fact that it was not considered a big problem. So I'd be curious to
yeah.
go back and look at the reviews, the contemporaneous reviews of Short Circuit 1 and ask people like was there generally an outrage over this? I suspect not. Maybe a few people who shrug and say like, well, that's not ideal, but nonetheless, the robot looks great, and then they just move on to praising whatever works, right? So, or even like, yeah, Fisher Stevens, we'll note he's not an Indian man, but his performance is still very funny. I can kind of see people doing that in a way that the culture has moved on from, like most definitely for the benefit of casting choices and diversity on screen, but 80s wasn't that long ago.
No. And they definitely
You
dumped a big truck of cash into his lawn for Short Circuit too. If Gutenberg's not coming back, they got to get him. So I think he made a lot of money on that movie.
Sure.
He's Fisher Stevens, right? But he's also kind of like the plague if you think about it. Let's say he was a Broadway actor beforehand and then he takes the Short Circuit roles. He's kind of like a hacker who went corporate in giant role.
Maybe. Well,
Yeah.
he strikes me as a really intelligent and thoughtful
Yeah. Oh yeah.
guy in very limited interviews I've seen with him. So if he gets asked about, oh, how do you feel now about playing, brown face in the Short Circuit movies, I'm sure if he gets asked often enough, I'm sure, he has a very kind of standard, but also very thoughtful and serious, non-dismissive answer about that as well. So I'd be curious to hear it.
Yeah, but I think he's just he's such a character, and that's another reason for cult classics are just I don't know. I think the first time you watch this movie and you see that the plague is the villain, you're really taken by the guy, just how dedicated he was, and I love that. And also, I think another reason for the success, just moving on, is the soundtrack. I think between Mortal
Hmm.
Kombat '95 with the Mortal Kombat and then this movie, the soundtrack was really ahead of its time in '95 because when you think about electronic dance music in cinema, it had most certainly been around before. I think Train Spotting helped. I think The Matrix helped, but this movie had a lot of Iain Softley is also British, so I think he brought people over from that scene. But it's a good soundtrack loaded with some really good EDM, and I think
Hmm.
what's interesting about EDM music is if it's not synth heavy, if it's not like Night the Roxbury, you hear that music and you instantly sort of date the movie. But you think of this one and the electronic dance music, it ages well. And so I think just like Massive Attack and Orbital and the
Hmm.
Prodigy.
And like Juno Reactor and things like that. Yeah. I mean, the best use of just like a really pulsing techno song in the entire 90s is the Blood Rave
Blade.
scene from
Yeah, yeah,
Blade.
yeah.
Yeah. It's just instantly iconic. It still kicks ass, right? Yeah. There's nothing, yeah, hasn't dated a bit. Yeah, we've talked previously about how the 90s was probably the best decade for movie soundtracks.
Do we have to say probably? Or we could say, I kind of feel like
All
it
right, yeah,
was.
okay.
Yeah.
I can did I say probably? I meant inarguably.
I guess because I grew
Um,
up in the 90s, so I'll go to bat for that.
yeah. So I've had to take a step back and think, well, am I just being partial to the 90s because it's the decade I know the best? I'm like, no, I think there's a legitimate argument to be made because all through the previous decades, up through the 80s, a movie soundtrack really consisted of that one pop hit that you want to, like Time of My Life or
Highway to the
Flashdance
Danger
Maniac,
Zone.
A Danger Zone, Don't You Forget About Me, Breakfast Club. It's like that one song, and then you play that on the radio, and that's your movie song, right? And then in the 90s, with like, and we've covered this before, but with The Crow and with
Oh,
Pump Up the Volume, you start to, and what singles, you start to get not just sort of burgeoning grunge and alternative rock tracks, but you get soundtracks that are composed entirely of alternative music,
Judgment Night.
not pop songs. Judgment Night's another good one. And then you get Train Spotting, of course. So not only is there kind of a new appetite for soundtracks that consist of non-radio friendly things, or maybe no, radio friendly is maybe not the way to put it, but stuff that isn't like hitting the pop charts, right? Alternative stuff. On top of which you have the emergence of three, I think, major movements in music that are inherently cinematic. One is industrial rock, the next is trip hop, and then sort of more kind of techno oriented stuff that we would now call EDM. And that stuff just works really well. Trip hop, like say Massive Attack stuff is really atmospheric and down tempo and just kind of oozes cinema if it's done properly. And so not only do those sort of new genres, emergent genres, make the soundtracks really cool. But it offered a lot of variety, and it just like made the CDs like worth buying. You know, you've got like David Lynch putting Nine Inch Nails and Rammstein on and Manson on his Lost Highway soundtrack, and you're just like, this soundtrack rules.
Yeah, it
And it
rocks.
also what also rocks about this is that David Lynch listens to this stuff too, and he gets it, right? He wants it for his very kind of mood oriented filmmaking. Like, yeah, there was definitely something going on in the 90s that is of its own.
He's also like Lion King, even Hunchback of Notre Dame. Like, there's some really good songs on that soundtrack, and Aladdin, like just as far as animated films on top of that. And then also too with the rise of like, John Singleton and movies like Above the Rim, like with like really great like rap soundtracks and like
Sure,
hip
yeah,
hop
yeah, yeah.
soundtracks. Like that was kind of the rise of that in the 90s. And there were movies in the 80s that helped start that. It wasn't the first. I'm just saying like the snowball got rolling down the hill in the 90s was kind of the big I don't know, whatever you call the snowball grows into a, what do you call it? Why can't I find the words? Just a giant ice pile rolling down.
An
Yeah,
even
yeah,
bigger
a
snowball.
huge ice ball rolling down a hill. So it blew up. But I think, listening to the soundtrack again, and I put on Facebook, Movie Stones on Flicks Facebook, I asked people who like their favorite EDM scenes of all time. And so while I'm looking for that, I also have my top five, and I want to run them by you real quick. So
Oh, okay.
okay, so I got Blade, the
I
New
just yeah,
World,
I
yeah,
just gave you Blade. Yeah, was
New
it
Order, Confusion,
Pump Panel Confusion? Yeah,
yeah,
no, it's called
incredible.
the Confusion Pump Panel Reconstruction Remix. I think is the full title of
Oh,
that.
amazing. That's one of the best
It's
scenes.
iconic. Yeah.
And just that you bring in this dude, he becomes the prey, and then Blade comes in, and then the predators become the prey. Like it's such an easy, beautiful opening. Okay, and then I have the Immortals Mortal Kombat theme from Mortal Kombat.
Okay.
Mortal Kombat, like just when that thing hit, I remember that movie blew me away in '95. And by the way, both Iain Softley and Paul W.S. Anderson were British guys, so they brought over a lot of Prodigy and everything into their films in the 90s. So I kind of like that they brought in British kind of dance music, whatever you call it, to that. Another one I love is Does It Offend You? Yeah, We Are Rock Stars, but it's from the Fast and
Hmm.
Furious 2009
From
soundtrack.
four. Yeah, from part
That
four.
that trailer, not Vin was back, Paul was back, but I'm telling you, that trailer was responsible for the $180 million opening weekend, because when we are like when Does It Offend You? Yeah kicks in, just and it's like time to the trailer. That's like, I think that's one of my favorite trailers ever made, and I love that song. It just, I mean, the soundtrack. All the movies have really great soundtracks. You just put a Spotify playlist on, you can listen to the Fast and Furious soundtrack song, and Tokyo Drift has a great one too, which I love. But I just, when that song comes on the trailer, I'm just like, oh, and I think that's why it made so much money. Then I
Yeah,
have
I'm with you. I remember that. I remember that one a lot. I think
it got you pumped,
six.
did it not?
It got you pumped, and I remember I think Fast Six. I don't know if it's featured in the film, but on the trailer, one of the trailers anyway, they use the Glitch Mob remix of "Breathe" by Prodigy in the trailer,
Whoa, really
and it's really good too. It's really banging.
good trailers, good music. All right, and then I have from Tron Legacy, the Derez. I have that
Hmm.
Mondo soundtrack and everything, but when then Derez comes on during the race and the club fight, like that song hits. Like that's a really great song by a band I like a lot. And when Derez hits, man, that thing got me pumped in the theaters. I saw it on this giant IMAX screen and just hearing that blasting my eardrums. Like I love that scene from Derez, like, or the from Tron Legacy, the Derez from Daft Punk. And
I
finally,
think that's I think
oh
that's one
sorry,
of the greatest soundtracks of all time.
yeah,
Tron Legacy, yeah. And regardless of whether you like the tracks or not, this it's the perfect marriage of we're gonna make this is an existing IP. We have this thing called Tron, and we want to reach out to these established music artists who have kind of a machine futuristic aesthetic. And these are things that are almost like destined to come together, right? Like whoever was the first person to think, who we should reach out to for the score? Daft Punk. Why don't we give them a call and see what they say? Give that guy, I don't know, the biggest high five, right?
yeah.
Because it's just such a perfect marriage of a studio property with kind of an exigent artist, and they bring together to create something that just fits so perfectly, and it feels so logical that this would be the case, right? And so, um, yeah, it's a great soundtrack.
It makes me. The most stressful MFF episode that I've ever recorded. Nick Rehack and I, we decided to do a draft, but the Purple Rain Tron Legacy song draft. But
Okay.
I had to do so much research for because every single song off Purple Rain is ginormous, and there's you could write a book about each one and how big that soundtrack was. So the amount of research I had to do, I thought it was just going to be a fun, cheeky episode, but I ended up just like driving myself insane with the research on that episode because you can't just talk about the Purple Rain soundtrack and be blasé about it. Like you got to look into that thing. So that was a very stressful episode.
Does Purple Rain hold up? I bet it doesn't.
I loved it. I still love it because it's got
Yeah.
a
Well, the
personality. I think
well, the
Prince is
music, the
there.
music is great. The music is great,
Yeah.
but I haven't seen it in a long, long time. But I'm guessing its treatment of women
Oh
hasn't
yeah.
aged all that well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
When he rips off her clothes and then leaves her. No, that's not great. But I guess just watching Prince run around and just there's a
Yeah.
personality to it.
Well, he has
So
that amazing moment where he does the completely unnecessary turn in the house. It was like,
yes, yes. But
answer me, motherfucker, and then does the spin.
that's why it works. I think because it has that personality. And
Yeah,
then
it's camp.
and before I give my last one, here's what some people said. Also recommended. Nathan LaHaye said the breakdance fight from Zoolander. Tony Coogan said the end of Train Spotting. Johnny Numb said Natalie Portman's drug fueled night at the rave in Black Swan and the Vet Academy initiation rave in Raw. That's a good. Johnny Numb knows what's up. And then Aaron Newirth dropped some bombs here. Aaron said all of Climax. I mean, the opening song, I know the song, super
Super
something.
nature.
Yeah, Super
Yeah.
Nature. And then he put the club fight in Tron Legacy, good pick. Lobby fight in Matrix. Shipping container fight chase in Hannah because the Chemical Brothers did that soundtrack. And the kids gathering weapons and attack the block. Great soundtrack and attack the block. Lisa Leahy said that she loves the soundtrack from The Saint because there's a lot of dance music. And then she's Lisa Leahy, a guest on MFF. She said, my entrance song at my wedding was Halcyon and On by Orbital. I discovered
Mhm.
that in an early sequence on the plane in Hackers, not to mention most sequences in Hackers. I also have to go with when they're working together to bring down the network. Love all caps that soundtrack. So big
Yeah, so
fan.
the two songs that I think are most prominent in Hackers is the Orbital song, Halcyon and On, and then Voodoo People by Prodigy, I think are the two,
Oh, they
among
rule.
others.
I remember when that song get that don't try. What's the name of that song by Prodigy? It was on MTV a lot. Never mind. James Donovan said the Blade nightclub fight scene, and Ken Howers said Hannah 2011, the entire movie. But if I had to pick one scene, it would be when she escaped the military base or when she faced off of Marissa at the amusement park. That soundtrack is wonderful. And my final pick is I had to include some Trent Reznor and Atticus Ross, but I'm taking Match Point from Challengers because it's not exactly EDM, but it just hits so hard. And it's such a live scene, that Match Point and Challengers. So I'm taking Match Point from Challengers because, man, that's like one of the most thrilling endings. And that song rules. And I love it so much. So
There's a I don't know if it's Clint Mansell or if it's a different artist, but there's a kind of a EDM electronic, very dark and moody electronic song that is on the Requiem for a Dream soundtrack.
oh yeah, a Lux.
It's not the
Yeah.
main theme, which is mostly strings, but like when they're shooting up in early hip hop montage.
Oh, nice. I I just listened to that one song over and over again. The Lux that was used for the Lord of the Rings Two Towers trailer.
Yeah, yeah, no, that's not what I mean.
Oh, okay.
That's Clint Mansell's like Requiem for a Dream
Oh, okay.
theme. I'm talking about. I'm gonna have to look this up.
Oh, there's a bunch of them here. Paul Oakenfold. Oh, wow. All right, I'll have to add that to my Spotify list. But this movie was ahead of its time with the soundtrack, and I love that. Like, I think it. And you know what's interesting? It should have released before all the other 95 hacker films, but they held it back because they didn't think audiences would understand hacking. So, and as opposed to coming out first
Hmm.
and being the trendsetter, it was released fourth, and everyone was kind of
Hmm.
tired of hacking films by then.
Oh, you think that kind of ended up hurting its box
Yeah,
office?
like I love Deep Rising. This is a random story, but it got delayed a year because of a bunch of issues. So when it came out, everyone had the Hard Rain, Titanic, this, that. It was supposed to come in before Titanic. So it was supposed to be, a blockbuster water movie before that. And then all of a sudden these big water movies like like even what's that? Deep Rising, not Deep Rising. What Deep Impact with the giant wave. Like there's a
Mhm.
lot of speed to all those films sort of beat it. So when it came out, everyone's like, oh, another cruise ship movie. I think it's really fun. But I think, yeah, they said that people were pretty tired of. They said marketers didn't know what to do with this movie when they watched it.
There's also like Leviathan with Peter
Yeah,
Weller. That's maybe a few years earlier. But then what was it 95? That Virus, the Jamie Lee
Virus.
Curtis movie,
That
is
was
also kind of
99,
a
99.
oh, is it? Okay.
Yeah, yeah. But I mean, I was trying to. Did I buy you enough time to find that song?
Oh yeah. So on the Requiem for a Dream soundtrack, and this is by Clint Mansell, there is a track called Party, and it's one of the early scenes when Wayans and Leto are shooting up and they're going into their drug fugue, and there's this like sick kind of electronic, dark, brooding electronic beat that kicks in. So the title Party will get you there, but I've also over the years encountered like 5 minute long kind of techno remix versions of it as well. So, but yeah,
Heck
but
yeah.
so the one, yeah, the one I just sent you is about 30 seconds long, but that should give you a taste of what it is. And you'll remember it too from the film. It's pretty iconic.
Awesome. And also too, I just want to go to Ebert's review. So I was thinking about this while you were looking for the song and we were kind of talking about that. But this goes back to Santiago. But I read his review here where Ebert wrote, Jolie, the daughter of John Voight and Miller, a British newcomer, bring a particular quality to performances that is convincing and engaging. And the other kids in the movie are interesting too, especially a young Latin genius named Freak, played by Renoi Santiago. I saw this movie not long after watching Dangerous Minds, and I was struck by how much more authentic these characters seemed. They're younger, more intense, and vulnerable, more gawky than hunky. And I think one thing I liked about this movie is, around the, I mean, high school movies at this time, kids in high school, you had the nerds, the jocks, the jerks, the everything like that. No one in school messes with these kids. Like, there's no bullies. There's no like jerk high schoolers named Brutus. These characters just kind of inhabit their own space and are left alone. And I like that about this movie. Like, I like that, when serial killer comes to the house, the mom's like, you can eat whatever you want. It's fine. Like they're understanding when he has to crash at their place. I think I don't know. I thought there's interesting ways that these characters are treated. Even with the dreams. There's a dream where Dade has a dream about acid burn, but then there's
Yeah,
a scene where
she has
acid
one
burn
too.
has a dream
Yeah.
about Dade. And I really thought that was interesting how just there's no like bad teenagers in this movie. And even the young kid, they take him under their arm and they're like, oh no, that was dumb. You don't hack across state lines. You spit out money from an ATM. You can't do that. So I like that it's quite a supportive ecosystem, even though they're wildly older from 17. So it's just, I was talking to my wife Megan. I'm like, sometimes it's really hard to watch a 25-year-old play a 17-year-old pretending to be a 17-year-old, because you're watching a 25-year-old showcase the emotions of a 17-year-old, and it just feels weird. But I think they pull it off pretty well here. They're able to be kind of mature. I think also in 90s New York, these kids were a little bit more grown, aside from Jonny Lee Miller. He came from out of town. Like, a lot of these kids are kind of on their own, doing their own thing. So even if they are seniors, they're going to be a little bit more mature than most kids in, like, say, a Kansas suburb high school. I don't know, just on average. So I don't know. I just found the likability of these, I don't know, this crew, and the way that the hackers united at the end. I thought that was interesting. And I like the mom. The mom was cool. She didn't have a terrible boyfriend that you had to deal with. Conveniently, Jolie's mom was never around. I don't know. I like that they left out a lot of that drama in the movie. And that's like another reason why I kind of felt like it still worked for me, or my kids loved it.
Yeah, I think what's key here is, unlike a Johnny Mnemonic or a Matrix or something like that, where the stakes are kind of world ending, quite literally, right? I mean, these are big stakes, so therefore they have to become warriors in the most serious way. Here, the key thing is that they're teenagers and that they're kind of into teenage stuff, because what you have here is that you have this contrast between sort of corporate control, like the sort of dystopic world in which corporations are controlling our data, versus the kind of youthful and more frivolous uses of technology. So they keep calling themselves elite, right? They're elite hackers. They can do this on some level that you and I could only dream of comprehending. But what are they doing it? They're using it to change their grades, to swap out what's playing on TV, as opposed to like using this power for true corporate malfeasance, right? The way Plague is. And so they keep saying things like, oh, he's elite or she's elite. The only metric for their skills is hacking into a TV station and changing the channel, right? It's such a frivolous use of a ranking system between, like, are you a B tier or A tier or S tier hacker? And so I think that's where a lot of the charm of this movie comes in, right? That they're just a bunch of goofy kids. Like Jesse Bradford with his braces and his like neurotic jittery, like he's like only a couple movies over from just being a goonie. You know what I mean? And so to
Cigarette,
have,
yeah.
yeah, you have these kids who are just they're basically kids. They're horny, they're impulsive, they're reckless, they're self-confident, but maybe that's not always justified. Like that stuff is great. And you're right, the older they feel sometimes, and I think Jonny Lee Miller and Angelina Jolie feel the oldest because they probably are the oldest among the cast. Yeah, it does take away from a little bit of that vibrancy. I think Jesse Bradford feels more authentically like a gawky teenager who doesn't want to go out, doesn't want to date, just wants to stay at home in his mother's apartment and just stay on his computer, who he has a female name for. Like he loves his computer and calls her Lucy. Like that, I think gives the film kind of an authenticity that having Keanu Reeves play a hacker, even though he's like conventionally handsome and very athletic, doesn't quite capture.
Yeah. And does it help that they're all pretty good at what they do? Sometimes you watch a movie and they're just learning, or there's often the case where someone who's not good at what they do gets brought into a group who's really good at what they do, and then that person has to get trained to become good.
Yeah, that's the then Ellen Page character from Inception, right? She's there to basically be the novice so that we as the audience can see everything through her perspective and get all the necessary exposition dumps, right?
So many questions. I counted the number of questions in that movie. I just want to get everyone out there. That was a lot of questions. I have a data post. I just don't know what to do with it. But yeah, I kind of like that this one he's already good at it. He just can't tell many people because of his past. It's nice watching capable people be capable. Like that scene where they have to take out all of what Wendell Pierce's, they kill him.
Yeah,
like,
that's a great montage. Yeah, that's just fun.
Yeah, and like just taking out Agent Dick Gill, and they're leaving messages on him, and but I like that. I like that. There's something
but that's
nice.
That teen energy, right? You don't get that in more serious-minded cyberpunk like RoboCop. You don't get a prankster thing. It's like, yeah, we're teenagers. We're gonna mess around with this with this cop.
And so like but they can do that. And I like that freak and cheat. Like in the beginning, where does freak say he's talking to, like Venezuela or something, or another country? So he's just like paying phone companies a recording to talk longer on the phone. And then serial killer it's a pretty interesting. He's like, yeah, I'm responsible for my parents not going to Woodstock, so they're like mad about him. He doesn't really have a house, but he drops some neat knowledge, and he has all the books. He has some deep knowledge about authors, and he drops Corinthians,
and
so it's
music, and yeah.
yeah, and so oh yeah, yeah, people who choked on their own barf. So it's interesting watching them all together because they all are quite smart kids, and I call them kids, but they're quite old at the time. But I like that about them. Even the young kid's pretty good about getting the young kid, inexperienced kid, gets a garbage file from you know the Gideon. No, not the Gideon. The
The
Gibson.
Gibson.
The Gibson makes me think about Cyborg with like JCVD, and that guy's names are named after guitars. But yeah,
I mean, Gibson is a reference to William Gibson,
yeah, William
right?
Gibson. I don't know. I just think about the guitars from Cyborg because it just makes me laugh.
Mm.
But I don't know. I like that. I like that they're good at what they do. They stick to a plan. They all work together. There's no narcs. I don't think none of them, like no one turns any of them in.
Dade kind of
Yeah, he does. Yeah.
hands over the disc at the end.
Yeah, but I guess he's a teenager and his mom is going to get charged with crack
Right.
cocaine possession.
Well, I mean, he redeems himself pretty
Yeah.
quickly, right? There's no extended stretch of the film in which people think like you betrayed us, man.
Yeah, he says, "Guys, I did this," and then they get over it. And so there's no Joey Pants from the Matrix, let's say,
Yeah.
in the group. I think that is another thing that makes it watchable because I think there's some great movies out there, but when they feature really heavy themes or long breakups or just really over serious things, like I think it kind of doesn't make it as watchable. But in this scene, he immediately atones for himself. You don't have to worry about abusive boyfriends or jerks or bad stepdads or home line plots, like plot lines, like sorry, plot lines about bad home life. I find that to be really welcoming, and this it has a propulsive energy to it.
Yeah.
It's like
It
rollerblading
has,
down a hill.
well, it has ultimately a nice balance between it has this middle section, which is about two egos competing with each other. So Crash and Burn are trying to see, right? And they're engaged in this kind of frivolous and playful contest just to see who is the better hacker. But eventually that has to take a backseat to recognizing an even a more important lesson, which is that we're stronger together than we are apart, right? Because the last act of this movie is a heist movie, right? And you've got all of these sort of disparate personalities all working together. Now, they don't have like Ocean's 11, one of them is a pickpocket and one of them is a con artist and one of them is a bomb expert. So they all have different skill sets. And this one, the skill sets are the same, but the fact that they come together to make it work is what completes the arc, right?
Oh yeah, we're stronger together. And then they take down the Gibson and then they blow it up. And I love how it's interesting too. It's tough to write a movie about staring at computer screens and make it interesting. You think about like war games or other films that you're just kind of
Yeah.
stuck looking at a computer.
That's why you get this sort of 90s trend of computer screens flickering or mapping onto their faces,
Yeah,
faces of the users, which is not something computers do.
just give me something interesting. Like that's why that's why people on computers always find something they shouldn't, or they have to hurry and hack. If you don't hack this, you're gonna die. Or in GoldenEye, he has to hack while clicking the pen. So it's like he would just
Or
be
like,
typing on the computer, but he's also clicking on the pen that's about to explode. So I
or
think
in Swordfish when he's like, "You got 60 seconds to do this," and by the way, this is Heidi or whoever she is.
yeah. So I think whenever you do that, a director has to kind of, oh man, I have someone staring at a computer screen. How do I make this interesting? And so I think you can excuse the giant worlds that are created in here and people just surfing around different areas because you got to make it cinematic. If you were just looking at ones and zeros and code and there was no spinning telephone booths that they just put and spun the actors around or spun the camera around, it just wouldn't be interesting. So you can sort of appreciate why they went so bombastic with a lot of that, and I like it.
Yeah, I've always been curious about this imagining of cyberspace as a city, right? With like city blocks full of grids that look like buildings. And I mean, even Tron, you go all the way back to Tron, and there's kind of an imagination that cyberspace is a physical world you can enter into and float around. Yeah, you're exactly right. It's an attempt to kind of how do we visualize something that is inherently impossible to visualize?
And I think they make it work. I do have a complaint about this movie. When Jolie is taking off on the, or Acid Burn is taking off on the motorcycle. The guy she's seen is wearing his helmet, but she's too cool to wear a helmet, and so she doesn't put it on. But I would argue that's not cool. But I think I'm also 43, not 18. So maybe I'm just older and I'm like, that's not cool. Like, put your helmet on. I don't know if you caught that scene.
I know exactly the scene you're talking about. I guess it didn't bother me, but yeah, you're right. It's not safe.
Yes, it is not cool to protect your head. Like, protecting your head from a crash is uncool. Yeah. But they're kids. I don't think they think that far ahead. But I guess since Jolie's older, you're like, what's going on here? But I don't want to see like a Larry Clark
Yeah,
hackers movie.
your parenting instinct kicked in there.
No, you know what's funny though? I learned to ride a motorcycle when I was 18. I had flip flops, shorts, and a shirt and no helmet. And I hit a mailbox. And the bike fell and landed on my leg and burned it really bad. And then I went to work at Burger King after putting rubbing alcohol and toilet paper around it. And then the toilet paper stuck to the burn. So I can't act like I'm like a acid burn was doing something. I did the same thing.
Right. She would just say, I learned it by watching you.
I learned about watching you, Dad. So yeah, never mind. Yeah, that was not one of my finest moments. I don't know why that guy's dad let me do that too, but whatever. And I was working at Burger King and then blood was going down my leg. So like my sock got covered in blood.
Jesus.
And my pants were so short that, like, it's, I don't know, it's Burger King, so you don't really worry about your outfit. I had really short pants on so you could see my ankles. And apparently blood, I didn't notice it, but blood was draining down my leg so much that I got my sock completely almost red. And then my manager freaked out when they saw it and they sent me home. And then I had to deal with getting
reminds me of remember The Passenger, that movie with
yeah.
what's his name
Good
from
movie.
Smile in It. Yeah, a really good movie. And the guy, I don't think it's a Burger King, but they're working at some fast food joint, and there's a massacre at the beginning, and he's covered in blood. And then that woman later, he said, "Oh no, this is just ketchup." And she takes that long drag on the cigarette and just goes, "That doesn't look like ketchup."
I should have said that. Yeah, it's ketchup. I want to pull the name of this actor up real quick because I like. Oh, Kyle Garner. That guy's great.
That's right. Yeah, from Smile.
Yeah, he's great. But yeah, that was my motorcycle story. So never mind, Acid Burn. I am sorry. I at least you were on a bike with someone who knew how to ride a bike. I just got on a bike, not knowing how to do it.
That is one character who disappears from the movie.
Yeah, but I kind of like that. I like that he doesn't fight Burn. Or no, wait, Crash. Wait, Crash. What was his
Crash
name again?
Override.
Yeah, Crash Override.
Zero Cool, aka Crash Override. Yeah,
I like that he doesn't become a problem. Like he's probably. I bet that dude's like, where's she at? I don't know, whatever. Like I'll just go find somebody else. Like,
no, there's a great moment when they're at the party and the acid burn. They're making out and they don't realize that all the guys are in the other corner of the room. And when she catches them, they say, she should be pissed, but instead she's like, "Hey man, you were just looking at your dope computer," and she goes, "Yeah, it is, right?" And then she just comes over. And so the boyfriend who she'd been previously making out with is just like, "All right, I guess, what am I, chopped liver?" And like that's a pivotal point in her character, right? She's still skeptical of Crash Override, of Dade, because they have this sort of petty rivalry. But that's the point in which she says, no, you know what? Between spending time on my computer and spending time making out with boys, I choose computers, right? That's her declaring her tribe in a way. And I kind of like that about her.
Yeah, she ran over. Also, two lines of dialogue that I'm not, or two that I
You mean
feel
the ADR?
Yeah, well, I just think they haven't aged well. When he's like, I bet it looks crunchy in the dark or crispy in the dark. Like, I don't know if I like that word, but maybe that was hacker lingo. And also, he's like, you're in the butter zone.
I thought you were going to refer to when
so much ADR.
She's leaning over Crash Override and she says something like, "I hope it don't screw like you type." But she clearly says fuck, but they ADR'd it.
Yeah.
Yeah. I thought that's what you're referring to.
No, I just like that the butter zone thing. Like you're in the butter zone now. What?
And, yeah, it was a jelly full of pudding.
Yeah. Just the butter zone. You're in the butter zone. But yeah, I mean, I'm glad we talked about this. I'm glad I got to cover this movie again.
Have we gone through your points?
Let's
like
see.
5 or 6.
So we went through all my actors, and okay, let's talk about Iain Softley a little bit. He had directed one movie before making this. It kind of hit the kind of film festival circuits. It was called Backbeat, and he got pretty well known for it just from film festivals. And he said at the time, one of his agents was talking to him. He said, "We only hire 3 people. Like 3 people are always being looked for. Like Steven Spielberg, someone else, and the new kid." and he was the new kid on the block, and so they gave him hackers. But I mean, I think it was great casting because he brought in Burton. He brought in a really interesting crew. I mean, his career hasn't been the best since Hackers. But I mean, he's steadily worked. But I think what he did with the music and the casting, and bringing Jonny Lee Miller over, he looked into the music. He got the costume designs. Like I think he realized what this script was. The guy who wrote the script had actually hung out with a bunch of hackers, so it was quite what's the word am I looking for? Realistic. Like, not realistic, but Raphael Moreau, it was authentic, I guess. So he just took a script that worked pretty well, brought in actors who cared. Yeah, I just think the decisions he made. He does regret the rollerblading, because he said in New York at the time everybody was rollerblading, but I don't know. You like Airborne came out at this time. There was a lot of rollerblading in the 90s. So, even if it dates it, I still think it gives the movie a personality. And it's a pretty good way to travel around New York City. It's better than walking. They can't drive. So, I mean, they can't biking. ET did that. So you got to find a way to get these kids across New York quickly. Like, I think rollerblades are a pretty good decision for them.
Yeah, the Neil Stephenson Snow Crash, which to my knowledge is yet to be adapted to anything, although people crib from it all the time, has a character. She's a courier. Her name's YT. The letters YT, and she rollerblades around town. But what she does is she gets on the freeway and like harpoons the bumpers of cars, sort of like the way Marty McFly like grabs onto a bumper and gets a free ride on his skateboard. She calls it pooning. It's like, I'm gonna poon that fender, and then just like ride discreetly behind the car on the freeway on her rollerblades.
So yeah,
one of the cooler like Razor Girl characters in the literature.
He's pooning. I like that. Is that why Alita has a lot of kind of rollerblading type stuff, or roller skating?
I imagine, I mean, this is a trope. It's called the Razor Girl trope. Molly from Neuromancer is kind of the archetype of that, who is like directly the visual reference for the main character in Ghost in the Shell, who is then, of course, the main visual reference for Trinity in the Matrix. And so that trope of the Razor Girl is kind of a staple of the genre, and Alita is very much in that vein, basically. So I don't think Alita is necessarily an adaptation or an homage to any particular character, but she's part of a kind of a long tradition of like the badass female cyborg.
Got it.
Okay. Yeah, Jane, the Dina Meyer character, Jane from Johnny Mnemonic, is a Razor Girl.
Oh, okay. Oh, because she has the update. Yeah, you could picture her on rollerblades.
Sure, yeah.
Dina Meyer on rollerblades. Why not? But yeah, I don't think that ages this movie. I don't mind the rollerblading because it makes sense. So I like that. And also, we talked about the casting, but if I cast this movie, I would be really proud of myself. Like, I think the finds that they got make this work, because if this movie rang as like inorganic, or if you cast, I don't know, people that are typically in like Hallmark Christmas movies, this wouldn't work. Or anybody who's pretending to be authentic, but I think they found the right people. And I like that. And I mean, even though Jonny Lee Miller's accent is there, I like his, I don't know, I like the professionalism. I think he pulls it off when he's yelling at his mom. Yeah, mom, I'm a virgin.
Yeah, he's not, I mean, he's not terrible. It's just the accent throws me off. And then Angelina Jolie, I wonder about her. But apart from that, the two leads, this is a movie packed with character performances. Right. It's got like very famous people in odd cameos. So like Wendell Pierce, of course, we think of like the Bong from The Wire, but like Penn Jillette is in it. Mark Anthony's in it. In small, and I would argue maybe thankless roles, but the whole thing is populated and I think elevated. And I think very different film, but The Crow has a very similar thing, which is that this is a world populated by just great character actors.
Oh yeah.
Through and through. Every villain has a very distinct personality, undergirded by a very different performance, even though they're all like quote unquote villains and they occupy the same role in the film. Yeah, Brandon Lee in The Crow is arguably the least interesting character because he's just, he's very sullen and has like a very sort of narrow mission, and all the other characters are like that tragedy and that drive that propels that revenge plot is what allows all the other characters to be just a little bit off kilter, right? Because this guy's the straight guy, which allows us to be a little bit bananas. And I think Hackers, although being a very different film, has a similar vibe going on, which is like, no, this is a playful movie. So let's get playful characters and have people with like very distinct personalities and performance styles to kind of populate it. I think that's another thing that makes this movie kind of, I'm going to say it now, just the word is fun. It's a very fun movie.
Fun. Yeah. even when he destroys an entire school's worth of computer programs, like probably thousands of dollars in damage, you don't think about that. You don't. You just enjoy the gag of it because of the umbrella. It still remains fun. And also the cinematographer, his name's Andre Sekula, Sekula. Sorry if I butchered that, but he also did Reservoir Dogs, Pulp Fiction.
Hmm.
He also shot Hackers, Four Rooms, and he shot American Psycho.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, pretty good movies. So
Interesting.
they
I wonder if there's like a visual similarity between them that we could take a look at. Like I'd be curious how like how he shoots New York in American Psycho versus in Hackers. Although his Hackers shot in New York.
they did London and New York.
That's what I
Yeah,
figured. Yeah.
but I mean, the work that I think he was able to get good work on, Reservoir Dogs and Pulp Fiction, just keep it on the fly and keep it kind of grimy. I think he captured that authenticity here as well. So yeah, it's just another, and he also shot Trust from 2010. So that's a pretty good movie.
Is that the Schwimmer movie?
Yeah, yeah, it's the Schwimmer movie. But no, I don't know. I think this is a movie a little bit of, I think, lightning in a bottle. I really I think it caught on. People loved it. I think hackers like it. The soundtrack is good. The actors are authentic, and it's kind of like a Hollywood movie done right.
Can I give you my take on this?
Yeah.
I think Hackers is the greatest cyberpunk movie of all time.
Ooh.
Yeah. And I'll make a case for it. And it's not to say it's a great movie or arguably even a good one, but it's the movie that I think most captures the spirit of the cyberpunk genre. They even cite the Hacker Manifesto in the middle of the
Yeah.
film, but it's not just that, right? It's that it operates on the philosophy of resistance and even like the joyousness and playfulness of cyberpunk. Um, Most cyberpunk is very dystopian, right, in its premise, whether it's like RoboCop or The Matrix or Terminator, right? By contrast, this movie is like genuinely utopian by the end. It's not to say that it doesn't have dystopian concerns that it's addressing, like about data economies and about the power of corporations to surveil you and profit off of you, which are like in line with the genre. But it also presents all of those things as being capable of overcoming. You can overtake these things or take these things down if you're part of a community that, with a little bit of coordination, can use those exact same weapons that they use to control us in subversive and unauthorized ways to imagine a better world and a different and more equitable world. I think most movies go for the cyber, but they don't get the punk right because it's about production design and you produce these really amazing worlds to look at. But like, I think key here is that this movie links the hacker lifestyle to the youthful energy of teenagers. And like I was talking about earlier, all of their indiscretions and impulsiveness, like that leading to sort of like that really delicate Goldilocks zone of a young adult who is like old enough to know the world is messed up, but still young enough to believe they can do something to affect positive change.
Oh.
And that zone of having teenagers who are like, we have this amazing power at our hands, and we don't have to take it. We're not comfortable in our adult lives. We're not looking for stability. We want to shake things up, and the keyboard is the way in which we're going to do that and imagine a better world for us. And I think that's a key theme of the genre that this movie captures more than any other. I do think The Matrix is a close second. I think it captures a genuine cyberpunk ethos of of resistance and whatnot that has really appreciated over time because the Wachowskis have both transitioned to become women. And that really kind of gives us an opportunity to look back on that first film and at least reread it through a queer lens and maybe reconsider certain assumptions we had about Neo's journey in a way that's maybe different or subversive. I think that's really interesting. All really great in terms of looking at cyberpunk as sort of a narrative of resistance against like corporate power. There's a couple problems though with the Matrix that keep it from being as good as Hackers. The first is that it's got a lot more going on. Like Matrix is also a
Yeah.
martial arts film, and
Yeah.
so I think it's got a problem, which is that at the center of it is a messiah narrative, which I don't think the genre is really about at its core. So that's an issue. And then the other problem is that I think the Matrix maybe sits a little bit too uncomfortably with its own bigness. It's a giant media franchise still owned by Warner Brothers. So I think that inevitably raises a thorny question about how punk can you really be when you're just a giant money generating machine for a major studio.
Can we talk about that for a little bit? So, you have
Sure.
Wally made by Disney and they're anti-corporate. You have movies that are kind of
Or
like,
even like Running Man from just
yeah,
last
oh
month,
man,
right?
that's bad. Yeah, just
Which is
Paramount.
like has this really like very aggressive eat the rich anti-corporate message coming from Paramount Studios. What,
Yeah,
like 3 months after you guys famously and very publicly caved to the Trump administration in order to get a merger through? It's a very, very weird movie to be coming from that particular studio. Anyway,
exactly. And so in they, Matrix, they even kind of backed away from the savior narrative because there's a different one every time and he always fails. So
right. So
it's
they kind of go back on it in an interesting way in the second one when the
yeah,
architect says like, oh no, this is all, yeah, it's a savior narrative, but the savior narrative is itself part of our master plan to lull you into thinking that saviors can exist to begin with, which is interesting.
yeah. But I guess that works. And Dune has done that recently really well with the savior trope, kind of subverting that. But I think you're
Hmm.
right though with this one because there's really no savior. They all work together, Crash and
Right.
Burn and the team. And they're not saving the world. They are preventing an oil tank or whatever from collapsing and the money issue. But it's kind of nice that, like you said, the world's not ending. It's a team ethos. There's no savior stuff. It was produced by a big company, but it didn't have a giant budget. And I think, everyone involved had kind of a punk take to it, even though it was funded by a major company. They still strive for kind of, it's not total studio fare. So that's a really good point you made about how it's,
Yeah.
yes, it's made by a studio, but it's also not saying, screw the system or screw everybody. It's just more of like, hey, there's a situation, and it ends very optimistically, but it's also not like solving the problems or saying the man is terrible. It's an interesting take, and I think that's what makes it maybe more rewatchable too, is because there is no savior. There is no, like I said, Joey Pants. There's no big choices, and it's just kind of exists on its own as like a snapshot with good music and that. It just seems like a bunch of young people were hired and they got together and made it, and it works.
Yeah,
Hungry
yeah.
people.
I think, the issue with a film like The Matrix is not that its spirit of anti-corporate, its spirit of resistance, its spirit of subversiveness. It's not an accident that the crew of the Nebuchadnezzar are gender fluid and multiracial, whereas all the agents are like white guys. Like,
Yeah.
yeah, there's an obvious sort of kind of anti-colonial message going on. And so the issue is not whether that's like undone by the fact that this is a major media franchise by a wealthy studio. But it certainly like sits uncomfortably alongside that fact. And I think you have to kind of be honest about that. Whereas so it's not to say hackers didn't have money behind it. It didn't serve a corporate interest. It's still a capitalist film. I'm sure
Yeah.
everyone involved would have been delighted if this movie had been a giant hit. But the the key is not that it didn't have money riding on it. The key is that it didn't succeed, right? And I think in
Yeah.
contrast to something like The Matrix, which
Huh.
spawned a gigantic transmedia franchise with video games and soundtracks and animation and things like that, as a result of this movie's failures and as a result of its lowbrow reputation, which is to say its lack of inclusion in proper or established social rankings, is what makes Hacker much more in line with the outsider ethos of hackers to begin with. So what makes it a great cyberpunk film is not just in its story and its message, and those are really important too, but it's also like the fact that it has this unabashed cult status gives it a sort of an outsider cred
Oh, it's
that
not
I
a
think has,
winner.
yeah, it's not,
It
well, it's not a winner, and it's about, it's a movie that celebrates outsiders and is kind of an outsider movie itself in
like
a way that really complements itself.
well, look at the Rocky Horror, and then look at Donnie Darko. Those are kind of outsiders as well. Like that became cult hits.
Mhm.
So it's kind of hard to become a cult hit when you're a giant hit, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I
So
mean, there's weird gradations between, yeah, it's like a massive cult hit. It's like, isn't that a oxymoron in a way? But
yeah,
yeah, so
how
like it
Dune
seeps into
Part
the
Two became
culture.
a cult classic. You're like, wait,
Yeah,
no, like Donnie Darko is a cult classic for sure. And which
yeah.
I was going to share the story earlier, but I didn't. But one of my favorite internet memories after I watched Donnie Darko, I immediately went online to read about it. Like, but I didn't get far because there wasn't many message boards about Donnie Darko at the time. But I still remember that. Like I desperately wanted to read something about the movie, and there wasn't much out there.
I think
But
my version of that was maybe 1 year, because that's 2001, right? So maybe a year before that, trying to see if there was anyone online who could explain to me what happens in Mulholland Drive.
yes, yes.
Yeah.
You're like, what just happened? And then you're desperately seeking the internet. I'm sure if I was better at it, I would have found something. But Any other
But
final thoughts about hackers?
no, but
No.
do you see what I mean though in terms of like the fact that this movie is generally written off as a failure compared to larger franchise movies is exactly its power, right? The fact that it has this
Absolutely.
sort of outsider these credentials to it is exactly what the genre is striving for to begin with. And so it doesn't come with this sort of central contradiction that a movie like The Matrix does, which is like how can you really dismantle the master's house with the master's tools, as Audre Lorde would say. And this movie doesn't quite have that burden around its ankles, and so as a result, it's genuinely joyful and celebratory about not just like, oh, wouldn't it be cool to be a hacker, but deeper than that, right? To say like, no, like band together and we can take over the world, right? We don't have to be under the thumb of the corporations. We have all the tools because they have provided them for us. If we just use them in subversive ways, we can rewrite history, man.
Oh,
Hack the planet.
hack the planet. And I got someone told me about the VHS tape, and I went and got it. And I was one of the few who loved it. Yeah, and I think that's interesting. It's interesting how like a box office failure can change the narrative about a movie and make it something kind of punk to like, or make you feel like it's still a corporately made capitalist thing. But since the fact that didn't do well and kind of disappeared quickly, and the fact that you find it on VHS and you feel like you're the only one who loves it, you can kind of latch on to that as that film. That's a really interesting concept. And
Yeah,
I like that.
I think the sweet spot in like
The
95,
butter
96,
zone.
the butter zone would have been not I bought Hackers on VHS, but I rented Hackers and then I dubbed it.
Copied it.
I copied it and then I circulated my copy. And so this idea of like, no, I have an unauthorized version of a seminal cyberpunk film is like maybe the most cyberpunk thing you could have done in terms of introducing this to people.
I would have recorded the recording.
And you get that slight degradation every time. Yeah.
How many recordings deep is this one? 7. Oh, that's the butter zone. Yeah, yeah. Oh, well, Professor Mike Dillon, this was awesome. Thank you so much.
This was awesome.
Yeah, no, this is good. I feel like we provided a new conversation about the movie, and that makes me happy because people love this film. So I'm glad that we didn't do beat for beat through the film and we found a lot of neat topics. And that's why I love having you on. This was a great
Yeah,
episode.
yeah. If you have listeners who haven't seen Hackers, I hope this kind of inspires them to go check it out and then, kind of participate in conversations about it. Keep it going, keep it alive.
Keep it in the butter
This is
zone.
one movie. Yeah, I hope no one touches this one. I hope this is not something I want eligible for
Oh,
remakes or reboots or whatever.
like they're inevitable, but the good news is it's not a horror film. Technology's so far advanced now that I don't know how you do a modern day hackers or even go in the past because it would never feel authentic. Like you couldn't go back and do a period piece trying to recreate the feel of this. No, yeah, leave it alone.
No, actually, I just had a thought. There's a movie that came out slightly before this movie that is essentially Hackers, but like a geriatric Hackers, but it has the same energy, same kind of joyfulness, same kind of warm blanket feeling of it. It's Sneakers.
Sneakers. I was gonna say that. Yeah. Ooh, computer hacker. But
There,
Robert
I
Redford is a
think
hacker. I love that.
I think that's a good double feature, right? Because
Yeah.
one is the more sort of grown up version. It's like I know the grown up version would have come out before Hackers, but it's like if the cast of Hackers were aged up 30 years or 40 years, then you get the cast of Sneakers, right?
And that movie has a great cast too. Yeah. Age him up. Get Dan Aykroyd in there. Dan Aykroyd seems like a real weirdo, so that kind of works that he's in it.
Yeah.
And River Phoenix takes it seriously. I love David Strathairn. There's a movie called A Little Prayer. He should have gotten a lot more nominations for him and Jane Levy. All right. Well, hey, Professor Mike Dillon, thank you so much for joining me.
Likewise, man. Good to talk to you.
All right. So for me, Mark Hoffmeyer, for Professor Mike Dillon. Wait, the adjunct Mike Dillon. This is Movie Films and Flicks. We'll see you next week.